those of you that have watched the show already, thank you very much for coming on the show. My guest today is William. Is it Will Holland or William Holland? Like
I go by Will, so it's William. On Facebook, it's William K. Holland because there were too many William Hollands on Facebook when I tried to sign on back in the day, and so I went with William K. because it separates me out from the back of it.
Yeah,
but I go by Will.
Okay, so so we're gonna go by what you go by because I'm just going with the flow. So I go by, people call me Joshua. I'm easygoing about it.
Okay.
So we were talking here, and I'm actually a little intimidated. So Will writes, he draws incredibly well. I love his style. It is really fun. It is like the most awesome middle grade like level stories I've ever seen. It's like, I'm actually afraid I kept my wallet far away for this conversation because I don't want, it's like, don't take my money just yet. I made other promises for other people to burn it there this time. But dude, no, man, you're incredibly talented. Honestly, I was really blown away with what I saw at 101 Tales. That's where I actually went on his thing. I offered to interview him before I changed the format of my show. But I'm like, no, he was like, no, man. He goes to me when I go end it. You're ending the show? It's like, no, I'm evolving it. You're going to be on the evolution of it now.
Oh.
So, welcome. My first question is, I always ask this, if you have anything incriminating you'd like to say, make it good.
Incriminating. Mm-hmm. I've been black all my life.
That's not incriminating.
I'm not done.
Oh.
I've been black all my life. And I will... through my life, if you get to know me, I will mess up your perception of what black looks like to you.
Ah, interesting. I'm Canadian, so it's I'm not gonna say it's definitely different than the American interpretation of that. Like it for sure. So I'm curious. Now I'm really curious how you're gonna spin that. But anywho, before we get into that, I did want to say this. Right before we started talking, I said I was causing chaos and mayhem, and Will did like the greatest Macho Man Randy Savage impersonation like ever. So, and I got off on that because I used to have a wall of Zen. So in my wall of Zen, I had two things from Rob Osborne. One of them was Pong. There's a thing of Pong, and the other one was a Macho Man Randy Savage picture. He's like my all-time. He's my all-time favorite wrestler. Like by a mile, he's my all-time favorite wrestler.
So growing up, the Macho Man, he played Pong sometimes on the Atari 64. Yeah, it was crazy. And the ball and the paddle, man. Yeah, old school controller with the roller, man. Yeah, it was a nasty situation. It put me in situations that I didn't always want to be in. Yeah, but I had to learn to deviate and shift like the little controller, man. Yeah, it was great. It was awesome because you got to remember, Josh, you got to remember, the cream always rises to the top, man. Yeah, champions are earned, man, and they fight hard to get it every day, whether it's Pong, wrestling, or life, man. Yeah. Dig it.
Also, you just referenced my all-time favorite promo.
Okay, I'm assuming that's the cream always rises to the top promo.
I love that promo. I think it's the greatest sales pitch I've ever seen. Because honestly, yeah, it's the most outlandish thing you'll ever like watch. But on one hand, but on the other hand, I really dig the fact that the cool thing about him, and I think he knew what he was. Like Macho Man Randy Savage knew exactly who he was. He knew he was like this one of a kind, interesting, dynamic character, and he played it up, and people came to see him perform. I mean, he's a great wrestler, but his character was so out there in like the best way possible. So I look at the cream of the crop promo in particular. I actually think every writer should look at that one because it's like he embraced who he was, and great results kind of came from that.
Pro wrestling is one of the coolest teachers for writers too, because if you take a character from point A to point B, I mean, if you look at like Hulk Hogan's career, for example, you know, Hogan started out a very different place when he was wrestling in Japan and stuff like that. So it was all more technical stuff and things like that. What made Hogan, though, in WWF was WrestleMania 3 when he body slammed Andre the Giant.
Mm-hmm.
What made him? At that point, the story took on a whole new area because then he became the All-American guy. He became the leader of the rock and wrestling revolution, and he was coming out there, telling their kids to say their prayers and eat their vitamins and whatever else he said, which he said a lot of stuff. But it's just those things, that mantra. And then you had him and Mr. T together and different things, and movies and all that stuff. It was crazy.
Yeah, well, Hogan's an interesting one because his peak was, I think was from 1985 to 1990. It was Hogan's World, right? 91, and then when he came back and joined the NWO way back down the line, that also was Hogan's World. But that early run, I think what made him, he was a showman. He was also a showman. But where unlike Savage could do literally anything. Like, absolutely, it didn't matter. You could be a good guy, you could be a bad guy, you could be like he's the most athletic guy, you can be the power guy. Didn't matter. Like, whatever role was required in the story, Savage could do it. And on a personal note, I think my all-time favorite Macho Man stuff was Macho King Randy Savage. I loved Macho King Randy Savage. It was just phenomenal.
Him and Sherry.
Yeah.
Martel.
Yeah, no, they were so good together. As much Savage and Liz is like the best story told in wrestling, bar none. But Sherry was his best partner. That's my opinion. That's my opinion on that. But
yeah.
And
I mean, for example, you go and watch that old school match between him and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Oh, God.
That match alone will tell you everything you need to know about storytelling. I mean, you take this perpetual good guy who, no matter what Macho Man did, he didn't bend, he didn't yield, he kept on coming. He was going to be there. He was going to represent the underdog. He's going to represent the underprivileged. So you really have, one of the coolest superhero stories even, or take that and put it into the story of a guy who's down on his luck, and, then he has to face some big corporation, and you kind of, there's so many ways to spin that story, but the story is just in that match. Build up, the match, the payoff, all of it. It's great to storytelling. It really is.
That match is still awesome to watch because it's also competitive. Like, it actually feels like an athletic competition between two very, very amazing wrestlers. And so Savage could do it in the ring. He could do it out of the ring. He was better with somebody, but he was good on his own too. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I love the Macho King because that was so over the top, right?
Infamous.
Yes.
If you know it, you know it. If you don't, find out.
I know. Yeah. Pro wrestling is like in terms of like pro wrestling is the basis of all superhero stories. It's basically a pro wrestling is it uses pain as a canvas to tell a story of good and evil. There are two guys trying to win. One guy will do anything to win, and the other guy is just trying to compete like a competitor. Like that's basic storytelling, but that's what makes pro wrestling so. When it's done well, pro wrestling is amazing storytelling. When it's done poorly, I'm too old for this shit. Like that's literally.
There you go.
Yeah, that's just my opinion. So, but yeah, man. So did you write first or did you draw first? I'm kind of curious.
Well, a lot of the stuff I do, honestly, I tend to draw a lot first, and then I work my story out of the drawings that I've done. So I'll have a series of pictures in my head, and I'll run those pictures out. Case in point, obviously, Santa's a spy. Like I shared at 101 Tales. I asked my mother 1,000 questions. I grew up in the projects for a little while. So I was like, well, how does Santa Claus get into projects? There's no chimneys here. How does that work? You got buildings above you, buildings below you. You're in the middle area. How does that work? And all this stuff. And so I would ask these questions, partially for my benefit, partially for my brothers later. So I pretty much figured out real quick there wasn't a guy that magically showed up in your house to give you stuff. But some of it was to keep my brother, because my brother was still in that world where he was still feeling like that was a reality. So I didn't want to mess that up for him. I don't want to be that person to kill it. And so I would ask these questions of my mom, and so she'd hand me a notebook one day. I was just like, here, write your questions down. At some point, hopefully you'll find the answers. Well, then years went by. I got older. It was up to a few years ago, and I started going, I may not have ever gotten those answers, but you know what? I can come up with those answers. I can start answering those questions myself. So then it was like, okay, so how does he get into houses? Well, if he had some sort of universal lockpick that would allow him to get into houses, well, that doesn't sound like a normal person. That has to be like a James Bond type dude, right? Because it's the only way you can get into houses anywhere. Well, then how does he travel across multiple time zones and get all the gifts delivered every year? What if he had technology that passed through NSA and all this other stuff? What if he had a vehicle that could fly faster than the speed of light in order to break, in order to get to places quicker? And then it was like, okay, so then what about Rudolph? Well, Rudolph can't be a normal reindeer because you gotta have, what does he do? Well, then how does Mrs. Claus work into it? How does the warehouse work to build the toys? Is the whole toy building thing a cover just so he has access to the world the whole year round? You take in the song it says, he knows that you've been sleeping. He knows if you've been good or bad or good. The spies know that kind of stuff. So what if Santa Claus is a spy? Because then that gives me the answers to the questions I've had about how he gets in the houses, how he crosses time barriers, how he knows all this information about all these people in the world. He just has satellites all over the place to give him that kind of information. So that's kind of where that came in.
That's awesome. No, I think, okay, so it sounds to me, okay, are you a comic book guy? Actually, before we go deeper in this, are you originally like a comic book guy too?
I grew up most of my life being a young cartoon kid. It was stuff like Thundercats, G.I. Joe, Transformers, Robotech. I mean, I didn't get introduced into a lot of anime really that I knew was anime until years later when I was in college. But I mean, I watched stuff like my aunt took me to go watch Akira when I was 9 because, quote, I loved cartoons. Akira will mess up a 9-year-old if they're not prepared for it.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Oh God, no, that's not a North
That's not
American
something you get a
9-year-old.
9-year-old to go watch. That said, I still love it. It's still one of the greatest animated movies ever. But still, at that time, it was crazy.
No, you're like, my mind just got blown. Like that's literally like
Just
that was
like
that.
I think my aunt's questions, what the hell is going on? That was the question that ran throughout the whole background in the theater. Like, and I didn't move. Like, I didn't know what was happening. I just knew it was crazy. And like, there were explosions, there were guns, there were awesome motorcycles, there were all this other cool stuff. And it was breathtaking, beautiful, and scary all at the same time. I didn't really get into comic books until I moved in with my mom because my stepdad had a huge collection of comic books. Like, and again, as I got older, by this point I'm a teenager, so I'm reading stuff like Savage Sword of Conan. Well, again, if my mother had known I was reading Savage Sword of Conan, she probably would have killed me and him because there was just
Him
stuff in
first,
it.
you second. Him
Yeah,
first, you second. That's what would have happened there in that order.
yeah. So, but then he had stuff like Alpha Flight, X-Men. Uh, he had stuff in they have him and my uncle would switch garbage bags full of comics, and just swap them. And then so like he'd be like, I got a new bag today. Here's some comic books to entertain yourself. So I've been drawing most of my life. So I would just start drawing the stuff I saw in the comics. And so like when, for example, you had the old school X-Men run. One of my favorite pictures, I never hope to forget, it's the John Byrne run of X-Men, the Dark Phoenix saga, the early part of the Dark Phoenix saga, where Jean Grey becomes the Black Queen before she goes Dark Phoenix. And there's that infamous cover with Wolverine just underneath in the sewer with the claws popped out. And he's just sitting there looking at you like, somebody's going to die. I don't know who's getting it, but somebody's getting it today. They're going to get this work. It was awesome. And so I've been hooked pretty much ever since. I mean, I remember my first summer working. My dad would go take me to the comic book store every Friday when I got paid so I could go get the latest issue of Superman. It was right around the time of Death of Superman. And so I was getting those books every week. It was just nuts. And then, of course, you had the Jim Lee stuff going on. You had the Jim Lee Spider-Man, the Jim Lee X-Men Revolution. You had early Topic Crawler Spider-Man stuff going on. You had Rob Liefeld doing X-Force. You had all these crazy stuff. And I wish I had all those books now still because if I did, I'd be able to, I don't know, pay for something big.
So, okay, before I got a lot of questions I got to ask you. I got one more before we go back.
Oh, sure.
Disney Afternoon, yay or nay?
Darkwing Duck was my jam. I own like physical DVD copies of Gargoyles, seasons 1 through 2. Goof Troop.
So just real quick before we it says, Will, you're kind of laggy. I don't know what's going on.
Laggy. I'm not for sure how to fix that.
Okay, I'm fine, apparently. Highland Fighter says I'm fine. So
okay.
Hi, Highland Fighter. Welcome to the podcast. I'm glad you could join us, and hope other people that do join us as well. But if you can't fix it, it is what it is. I mean, dude,
okay.
Right? As long as you're aware that there might be like a pause.
Okay. So, Disney Afternoon loved it. Like I said, Gargoyles. My mother was glad I got into Gargoyles because I started reading more as a result of watching Gargoyles.
Okay. So for me, this was me. My Disney Afternoon. All right, DuckTales. I love me some DuckTales.
Mm-hmm.
Gummy Bears. Gummy Bears was just so damn cool. A lot of people have missed that one when they go back, but that one's damn cool. I'm a sucker for Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. I just loved Chip and Dale when I was a kid, and then I got to watch that. And Dale still, all the episodes with Dale are still my favorite because it just.
I was more a Tailspin kid. I love me some Chip and Dale.
Yeah, no. That Tailspin's okay. I didn't. Bonkers sucked. It's the only one of the ones I thought sucked.
It was all right.
You're nicer than I am. What can I say?
It was all right. It wasn't that great. It was all right.
So, but for me, it was. How do I put this? I loved the Disney Afternoon because it sounds like you and I have a similar kind of imagination, and you're probably more talented than I am. Just watching the results of what you do, you're probably more talented. I'm a big enough man to admit it. I'm gonna weep a little bit on the inside just based on the because you are damn good, but. We have a similar imagination. I love Darkwing Duck. I really love Darkwing Duck. That's my favorite. It's really tough for me. DuckTales or Darkwing Duck are kind of like they're similar, but I like Launchpad and DuckTales better. But I love Darkwing. I love the Darkwing. My all-time favorite one is still when he does his comic book. That comic book is like the best episode ever. Right? So I love that show. The reason I'm bringing all this up, though, is simply put, it sounds to me like you were like a sponge with everything you did, right? And you just because when I see your style now, I see the Disney Afternoon, I see anime, I see Thundercats, I see I'm the comics you read. Although not so much Savage Sword, although I'm sure it's there. Yay! Thank you, Highland Fighter.
Awesome, Highland Fighter. Cool.
Yeah, I got a new follower apparently. Nice to meet you. All right, but the thing about that is, like, I look at your style. You have so much energy. Like you have such like this. I want to go back to Santa here. I gotta talk to you about that at some point here.
Okay.
But you have so much energy, and I was just wondering, like, so for you, then it's like pictures are just easier than words, or is it more like what's the term? Because it sounds to me like you're more visual minded, but you're definitely like you are a very smart storyteller. So I'm just kind of curious, like how that evolved.
I'll tell a story to help with that.
Yeah.
So when I drew my version of Santa Claus out, I initially drew this picture. Okay. So I was thinking in my mind, if you took James Bond and gave him a bit of a almost Magnum PI look with a bit more of a Santa Claus style to it. And so I was like, okay, so what kind of stories can we tell with him? Like, what are we doing? Where are we going? And so a big question I always have is, okay, so what does Santa Claus do the other 300-something days of the year? But he's not out delivering gifts. Well, how do you pay elves to build toys for children? You know, how do you maintain a multi-billion-dollar factory? Well, he's not Tony Stark. He doesn't just have money rolling in. He's got to do something that allows him to live this life and to bless other people. And so this is where he works as a spy for the government. You know, he can get in and out of places that nobody else can. he has fighting skills and things like that he can use in order to help defend himself if he needs to. But he tries to get in and out without being seen. If you've seen him, it's already too late. Like, it's going to be bad for you. Like, it may take him a while to get you down. He's going to figure out a way to get you down because at the end of the day, yes, he and Mrs. Claus will eat those cookies and they'll love on those kids if they get caught and all this other stuff. But don't put him in a bad spot because he'll put you down.
My money's burning. My money is burning. It's burning. No, it's because like you sound like okay. So the visual came first, and what did you get into when you started reading? Like it sounds to me like Gargoyles. You said made you read. What did Gargoyles make you read?
Oh, let's see. So of course Macbeth was a character.
Yeah.
I went back and found Macbeth, and I should have read Macbeth because I wanted to understand the character that they used in the show. And then, Iago was referenced in it. So then I was like, okay, well, let me go find out where Iago is. So then I was like, all right, so let me get into Othello. So I started reading that. I had read Julius Caesar in high school, but it was more like a high school assignment. I had to do it. I didn't do it.
Yeah, and it's not a fun play.
Julius Caesar, Romeo and Juliet. You had to read those.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I got to Gargoyle. So it's like, so who are these other people? Like, what is this world? So then I started reading, trying to find fantasy stuff. I found old school C.S. Lewis back when he was doing sci-fi before he did more of the Christian-based sci-fi stuff. And then I was like, okay, well, who else is down there? So I started reading a little bit of Tolkien. Now, I've not read the vast amount that other people have as far as the Lord of the Rings and stuff like that, but I've read a lot of his stuff because there's just so much to it. I've read bits and pieces of it.
It sounds to me like, yeah, but okay, you have a pretty good, like, your story fundamentals are good. Shakespeare is, okay, my pick on Shakespeare, he has 5 amazing plays. Othello's one of them. I love Midsummer's Night Dream. I think that's a fantastic story.
Mm-hmm.
Macbeth, Hamlet, right? And of all his comedies, I really like Merchant of Venice. So those are my 5 that I really think are good. Romeo and Juliet is a great love story. It's one of the original love stories. I'm not disrespecting anything else. Shakespeare's poems are incredible,
mm-hmm.
right? But those are the 5 plays I think that are worth. If I were telling anybody you were really serious to get into Shakespeare, those are the 5. And I thought it was like, that's a dense and incredibly humane. It examined the human condition in a really, really deep way, especially at that time. You wouldn't think some of the issues we have today were there, but they were there back then too.
Well, I mean, it was very much an educational race relations that a lot of people didn't realize because you had Othello, who was a Moorish person. The Moors were from an African tribe.
Yeah.
And so the Moors were these people. And so you have this whole idea that, well, he married Desdemona and all this other stuff. Of course, you had Iago, who was jealous of him because he wanted Desdemona, because he knew who Desdemona who Desdemona was before they met. And so there's this idea of, well, you're from this country. Why did you get this beautiful woman? You know what I mean? So there's these plays on things. There's this betrayal. There's this very intricate plan that gets laid out. These traps almost that Iago and some of these other people, massive manipulation. And so it's like Othello is playing Chinese checkers and Iago is playing chess.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. So there's a lot of moving pieces involved. And so I read that. My mom was like, why are you reading all this stuff? I said, because I've been watching Gargoyles and I want to know who some of these characters are. But as I call myself a rabbit hole person, because if I start going down a path and I see something that splinters off, I'm going to make a note because I want to go find out where that splinter goes.
I'm the same way. So when I'm reading one of my books right now, it's Alice in Wonderland is Greek mythology. So what I'm doing right now is my next book is literally Croquet and the Labyrinth, right? The Minoan Labyrinth. So I started looking up underworld birds. I started looking up how can I incorporate the Alice's story as we know it, but reimagine it with a Greek tragedy nuance to it. So Alice is playing Jason in the Labyrinth. That's actually what's going on, right? and the Queen of Hearts is the goal at the end of the maze, right?
Love it.
Yeah, so like that's the thing. But the thing is, I'm right now. If you look at my weekend like story time reads on the podcast, it's Alice in Wonderland. Partly it's for my research. I honestly, guys, partially a research thing, but the other part of it is like because I'm doing an Alice in Wonderland series, I'm looking as much as I can into Alice. So I'm also now looking up some Carl Jung stuff. Did you know Alice in Wonderland was the original spot where 42 shows up? Remember Douglas Adams, the answer to everything's 42? It's originally in Alice in Wonderland.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's originally there.
Huh. Cool.
Yeah, it's originally there. It's an interesting. I found it in the annotated like Alice, and so that's what I'm using for my some of my research. And it's like 42 is referenced in Alice in Wonderland. It's like, whoa, is this a deep book? And it is an incredibly deep, dense dive into literature and archetypes. And so it sounds to me like even though maybe you seem more like a gamer than a reader. Is that accurate?
There is a bit of gamer, but I'm a lot more of a reader than I am a gamer. Like I'm not a guy. Like I tried Fortnite just because I wanted to see what all the fuss was about.
Okay.
I love wrestling games, so I pick up some wrestling games here and there. I just started replaying Final Fantasy VII because I got to a point in Final Fantasy VII and I just stopped playing when I was younger. So I was just like, I want to finish this because that's been kind of something my pastor and I was talking one day. And one of the things he said, you have a failure to succeed. And I didn't understand what he meant. I was like, what do you mean by that? He's like, so let me ask you a question. If you start 100 projects but don't finish any of them, what's the point of starting? I was like, I don't know for sure. He said, okay, so you start stuff really well, but you don't finish a lot of things. He said, what I want you to focus on is start something you can finish. And then once you do that, do it again. And then once you do that, do it again. And once you do that, do it again.
Yeah.
Because as you do it, you'll begin to get in a habit of finishing things. And then you won't tolerate starting something and not want to see it end result.
I had to overcome that in my 20s. Like I would come up with these big, immaculate projects, and I never finished any of them until like I realized this was becoming a pattern at like 25. So at 25, I realized like, okay, I gotta break this because I'm never going to accomplish anything if I just leave it there. You know what I mean? So, but I also like going through this and also doing stuff like this podcast and other things. I recognize something too. The more you finish things, the more you become successful. Mm-hmm. That's how it is. And I realize that, for at least in my case, I don't fear failure, but success can scare you.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Was that the case with you?
That was definitely the case with me because you see the stories, you see the people, you see, you see the true Hollywood stories. You see the Kim Kardashian, who was a normal teenager. She was living a normal life. And when I say normal, I mean a normal life for a person whose dad was a lawyer and whose mom was, Kris Jenner. And eventually she would end up marrying a guy who wasn't Kris Jenner at the time, she was Kris Kardashian, but would eventually become, get married to Bruce Jenner, who was like the Wheaties guy for forever. So I don't know if you consider that normal, but, you go through this whole thing where there are changes that you go through. We all go through changes. As healthy people, we all should change.
Absolutely.
Certain evidence of that we should change. The problem is, I guess at the end of the day, my fear was that I would wake up one day and be in a place and look back and not be in a place that I wanted to be in. Like to be in a place where I was like, yeah, I'm successful, but I stepped on all these people to get there. And I don't want to be that guy.
I gained the whole world, but lost your own soul.
Right. Yeah. And I don't want that because God has brought me too far. And I don't want to get to a place mentally where I forget the doors he's opened, the opportunities he's given, the inspiration that he's given. I want to continue to be able to be interlinked with him and my faith because I feel like that I don't feel like I get here without the faith I have.
don't actually know. You know what? Honestly, it's true with everybody, whether people admit this or not. What you believe. I mean, I believe in God. Not everybody that listens to my show does, but I realize that everybody believes in something and carries their own story through. So, and if you don't have that faith in yourself or faith in your story or faith in God or whatever that faith is you have, you never get the doors to open the way you want to go. I don't think you'd ever really had to worry about that, though, to be very honest with you, my friend. I don't know you very well, but just based on what I've just from our brief half hour together, you're a very grateful guy with what you do have. And because of that gratitude is very important because gratitude is very much about gratitude humbles you in a great way because what it forces you to do is you have to take a look at what you have and what you don't, and you have to be very honest with yourself about how you got to where you're at. I have a lot to be grateful for right now. I'm in a situation where I've been just trying to do my own thing and become my own creative success. I want to really go and become a much more successful creative. That's why I'm doing this. I'm taking what I do very well. I interview people. I make an ass of myself in front of a national audience, and I'm good at it, right? But the thing about that, right, is you have to take chances. And I'm in a position where I can take chances, and I'm eternally grateful for that right now. Now, there's going to come a time when this comes to an end, and I'm going to have to either go forward or go back, however it happens. I think I'm going to succeed, but I might not. I mean, that's always a possibility too. But I've answered the call. Like the many are called, but few are chosen. I think you answer your call. What you're so like you again. We've seen little bits of pieces of this already. You're an incredibly talented, gifted human being. You can do it like your stuff. Middle graders will love your stuff. It's energetic. It's fun. You have this really, really fun imagination. It's what you're supposed to do. I don't feel you take a shortcut. I feel that as long as you keep putting yourself out in front of the world will notice you. You're too talented not to be noticed. I think you'll get the things you deserve. Does that make sense?
I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate that. Trust me when I tell you, there's a lot of prayer and a lot of sacrifice to get here.
Oh no, I'm not even denying that at all. Nobody does it alone. Nobody. It's the biggest lie we tell ourselves in this world. It's like, I did it by myself. No, you didn't. There are a lot of people, a lot of God, a lot of people, the right places at the right time. They had to kind of align a certain way. Now, the question is, when those things do happen, are you smart enough to walk through the doors that are open, right? And you will change as a result of going through all that. But may I just offer as a wonderfully, possibly optimistic point of view, you'll become a better version of who you already are.
I strive for that, so that's nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah, that's kind of how I see it, right? I feel in your case, you do amazing things. Like again, we haven't scratched like your writing. We haven't talked about that yet. You do your own podcast as well, if I'm not mistaken. Right? So I mean, it's, like I said, you're like a more talented person. I think I'm gonna say I'm the handsome one. Can I have that? Can you let me have that one?
Hey, yeah, your show. You got it.
Yeah. Okay, that's done. You're the talented one. I'm the pretty one. We can go with that. But in all seriousness, you have lots of talent, and the challenge with talented people, with any kind of talented person, is a willingness to show that talent and not be afraid of the people that will shun them, that will resent you for what you do, which unfortunately I am sure you've gone through your fair share of that. Unfortunately. But also the people that appreciate what you do and the fact that you shine in the night. That, and you can't be afraid to shine in the night. Like I equate to C.S. Lewis read what would become Mere Christianity during World War II. Now, on the one hand, you got to think about that. It's the dumbest thing in the world. On one hand, just think about it. You are reading at a radio station while your city is being bombed. Your words aren't going to change the fact that the bombs are falling. On the other hand, you're also displaying that no matter what the situation, no matter how bad things get, life goes on, and people can keep on living. And by telling your story, you're letting the world know that they are not alone. People like you are out there with Santa as a spy, just kicking it butt and taking names and helping children everywhere. That's such a cool, but it's a cool story, and it says something about who you are as a person. And by doing what you're doing, you're encouraging others to shine as well.
Yeah, definitely want to use what I have to try to inspire others to tell their stories. I think statistically they say that 80% of the people in the world want to write their story, but about 10%, 10 to 15% actually do. In some cases, that's as low as 2% of the world actually puts their stories out there. So it's just like, I know their stories. I hear them all the time. I hear people will say things and they'll just be like, oh yeah, when I was a kid, I wrote this thing about this and everything. And I was just like, well, what have you done with it? They're just like, oh, I just wrote it when I was a kid. It's nothing to come up. And I said, well, it can help somebody.
Then why you still talk about it? If it wasn't important, you wouldn't say a word about it.
It still resonates with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Which means it's important. So why not put it out there in the world so that somebody else can read it and go, huh, I didn't know. I thought I was the only one that felt this way.
Yeah. No, it sounds to me, man, that if you're not over your fears, you've come to peace with them at the very least. Is that accurate?
Well, it's taken a while. It has. Like I said, it took a while to get there because, again, it was like when my pastor told me that, I didn't understand it really. Like, it didn't resonate with me then. It took a while before it was just like, yeah, he's right.
You confidence. It took you a while to find your confidence. Is that fair?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, okay. I got the impression when we started this that you tend to be a little shy at first, and then it was like, okay, and it's like, but once you become more personable, more like honest, as we've talked as well. So it's like, okay, I could see it. I could definitely see where like that development has come, and it's also because you have finished multiple things since. I'm assuming like that's not his only book, ladies and gentlemen. Like he's done other things.
Example. Life matters.
Which is actually, of all the books he has, is actually my favorite. Although I'm not going to lie, my wallet actually like literally there was like a flicker of smokes. Like my money just said, "Why are you burning me? You need this right now." But you have like, I love your imagination, man. I think you are the kind of imagination that I wish there was more of. There's just like this joy in it that I can actually when I hear it, I cannot help but smile at it. Like Santa with the Secret Spy Organization, it's literally something a kid would come up with, and maybe you did come up with all this as a kid, but you tell it in such a phenomenally cool way. I just was like, there's nothing quite like this, but I love that it's out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny too. You mentioned that. I just finished. Of course, during October. There's always the Sketchtober, Inktober stuff. And so Mog Park had done a thing called Sketchtober, where every day we get on Facebook and post our stuff. And so we were all going to different things. And so I was like, I said, what if I use the month of October to put my stuff together for a story I've been working on? I've been wanting to do something with the Universal Monsters. But, of course, I have to be careful because it's not public domain for the Universal Monsters because Universal, of course, owns the rights to specifically Frankenstein and the Creature from the Black Lagoon and Dracula and the werewolf and all that stuff. So I was just like, okay, so Will, how can you tell stories you want to tell about creatures that are inspired by these guys, but not be sued for it, so to speak? Because I don't have that kind of money to roll in. So
No.
this is the Inviso Kid and the Monster Squad source book. So this is the newest thing. So basically what I started doing, this is some of the crew here. You don't have everybody in there. So there's a Bizzo Kid, and then there's Tamra, who's the mummy, and then there's Jason, who is the vampire, and then there's Aqua Starks, who's my ode to the creature from the Black Lagoon. And so then as you go through the book, you'll see little files on some of the different characters. Like this is the file on Frank. Frank was my football player who ended up getting into an accident, and his sister basically did the experimentation, Freya, to keep him alive, so to speak. But in the process of the experimentation, he ends up drawing in electricity constantly. And so if he ends up overpowering himself, the more electricity he ends up getting, he gets angrier because the electricity, of course, is not supposed to be in his body that much. So he can come off looking like a real bad monster when he's really not. So then let's show one more example here. This is Jonah Fang. He's an islander with a tribe of people who have animal totems that they represent. And so his family is the Wolf Clan. And so basically he has almost a werewolf-like form about him. These are the different files that are on each person. And they are going up against the Zombie King because zombies are the rage still. So I wanted to have a main bad guy who was based around zombies who could turn people into zombies just by touch.
Ooh.
And so the more he makes contact with people, then his powers increase to the point where he hits his ultimate form. And then Invisible Kid finds out about this pretty early on, and he's trying to put this group of monsters together to stop him. They may succeed, they may not, but there's a whole lot more behind it than just what you've seen. Of course, there's an evil organization that's trying to manipulate the whole thing, and so.
Okay, so I gotta ask this. Just going back to comics.
Sure.
Are you big into like Thunder Agents? I'm asking this because you got that's one of those like cool like alphabet like organizations things that definitely was around that same time as Savage Sword. I grew up reading that. That's why I'm asking them if it's that.
I know of them, but I don't really.
Okay, no, sir.
I don't really know about where I got the whole evil thing. Actually, is the evil organization is Claw from Inspector Gadget.
Oh my god!
And also Get Smart because there was evil
organization. Yeah, in Chaos. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Chaos.
I get that.
And then of course Darkwing Duck, and you see the theme. Yeah.
No, because to me, see here's the thing. Like to me, I love these big giant like evil organization stuff. But so this was my theory. I always thought Dr. Claw was Chief Quimby.
Okay.
No, see, the reason why I said that is Quimby would always lure Gadget into a trap. This was his way because he would always do these missions. Quimby somehow would always get wind of it, and Gadget would keep blowing him and every time he'd do it, he would try to kill him with the note to start with. Somehow, some way, Quimby always got it. I think after a while, getting yourself blown up, you take it very personally. Yeah, right. And you never see who Claw actually is throughout the whole run. You never see his face. And it occurred to me, it'd be the perfect way because you keep your friends close, you keep your enemies closer, right? Although, I mean, where it kind of falls apart a little bit is why would you get the guy that constantly foils you, right? That makes no sense either. But from the point of view of I'm trying to kill this guy, and I got this organization to kill this guy. This might be a hobby to me more than an actual whatever. But
right.
But you get the idea. It's like Quimby would have a motive. Like he had a motive to to go after Gadget because again, those self-destructive notes, man. Every time he'd get it in the face. Every freaking time. I'd go nuts. Or I at least hit Gadget once. Like I would lose it,
Yeah, I got that. I never really thought about that, process it that way, but that makes sense. Only thing I'm mad at is that we never got a spinoff where we got to have this Penny and Brain.
Yeah, no. Well, I think I don't know if this is not a knock to Penny and Brain as characters. I just think one of the reasons why that cartoon worked for so long was because Gadget was Gadget, right? I mean, if you really look at it, I mean, Inspector Gadget is the biggest low blower to get smart ever, not just because of who played Inspector Gadget.
Right.
Smart himself was not like 99 was always the badass of the two of them, right? And everybody knew it. It's like Penny's the real capable one in Gadget. But the thing about that is, on her own, she's a straight man. Brain can be comedic, and he serves the Brain is kind of in the middle, right? He can be the straight man in the right situations, right? But he can also be kind of the foil. But he's better when he suits. He's much like Sylvester in Looney Tunes. He suits the role he's casting.
Yeah.
Right. If he was just the clown, it would do him a disservice. If it was, I can't believe I'm having this conversation with Inspector Gadget.
Hey, I'm down for it.
Yeah, you know, everybody. Hey, yeah, it's like. So it's like I just think Penny would need a comedic foil, right? Gadget, you never got the impression Gadget was dumb. You just got the impression that he was kind of oblivious, right? Right.
Well, that was part of it, but I also think that his technology wasn't always the best.
There was things
he was trying to do, and then his technology was just like, oh, today you're getting propellers.
Yes. You know, which again, that was part of the fun of the show too, right? But Gadget adds so much to it, to how Penny and Brain react to the story. On their own, they would need a way to do that. Because again, Penny being the capable problem solver, I don't think you could do it as a comedy. You could do it like as a serious spy story. She's a badass. You put her against someone that's as capable as her, you'd have a really cool story there. But it's not a comedy anymore. It's drama.
Yeah.
Right. Right. That's my take on it. I could be wrong, but you know, it's one of those where it's like the shows like as I've gotten older / wiser, will lead the wiser to somebody smarter than I am. But I'm learning how the fact that why stories work. I'm learning more and more about why they work and why they don't sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, it really comes down to one thing more often than not, and that's the integrity of the characters you're writing. That's it. If you can stay true to the characters, even if the story isn't necessarily like the you don't need to be Shakespeare, right? But you do need, your job as a storyteller is to fulfill the expectations of the reader, but do it in a way they don't expect. That's the real magic trick that's you're pulling every time you tell a story. Mm-hmm. So when I look at okay, stuff I loved watching growing up as a kid. Why does Darkwing Duck work? Because Goslin. It's Goslin's whole. She's the one that makes it work. Yeah. Darkwing needs God. It's a superhero with a daughter, which I think is actually, man, I was so ahead of its time.
It's a single dad.
Yeah, no, it was so ahead. So ahead of its time that way.
Yeah.
Right, but it's also their relationship was a big part of that show, right? Don't get me wrong, I love Honker. Honker is one of my favorite side characters ever. Launchpad, although it was, I think, again, better than DuckTales, still a solid character in Darkwing Duck. But it's one of those situations where it was like, this works because of Goslin. Goslin's what makes this work. And if you took Goslin out of that show, it's nowhere near as good.
Yeah. Now, have you been able to follow the latest DuckTales shows? Because they've been
I haven't watched it yet. Is it good?
Okay, it's very good. First of all, David Tennant kills it as Scrooge.
Okay,
I love it. But they've been doing Darkwing Duck episodes in the DuckTales show, and as a matter of fact, they did a whole episode because they do it for the premise initially. They did it for the premise of it's a show that Launchpad watched in our current version of DuckTales. So they go down to the casting studio where a new guy, whose name is actually Drake Mallard, goes in and is wanting to play the role of the new Darkwing Duck. the old character is voiced by the same guy from the original show.
So oh my God, Tad Stones is doing it? That's awesome. That's
and
awesome.
So he comes in and he's doing the voice for the original character. So it's just the old man. So they do some awesome stuff with that one. Then the newest one they just dropped a few weeks ago. I think it's still on YouTube. You can watch that on YouTube. But they have it where Drake Mallard has now officially just become Darkwing Duck. They're in St. Canard. It's maybe miles away from Duckburg. And so like Launchpad drives over and him and Huey, I think, drive over. And so they're there and it's just like there's no crime. What's the situation? Well, Taurus Bulba is in the episode as a scientist working for Scrooge.
Oh my God.
He's building a machine called the Ramrod. If you remember the first episode of Darkwing Duck, he's trying to steal a machine called the Ramrod. This time they've changed it a bit.
Does it still have the color keyboard? Does it still have the color keyboard from the first? Oh my, okay.
Yeah.
I'm in.
So here's the big announcement. Here's the big announcement that they did. I think it was a week or two ago. Seth Rogen is working with Disney to do a reboot of Darkwing Duck as an official series.
As long as they keep that dynamic, like I said, like you. Okay, so like I said, we're talking about stories. I'm a Ninja Turtles guy. Why does that series work? The Brotherhood. Leonardo, Donatello, like the fact that they're brothers and they interact like brothers. That's why that works, right?
Have you got a chance to check out The Last Ronin yet?
It's coming in my mailbox.
Okay, good. I've read the first issue. Oh no, I'm not going to do that to you. Okay, let me tell you a funny story. I had my copy at my local LCS, but my local LCS is in Houston. I live in Kentucky. So I paid for my books and I have to wait for the books to get to me, right?
Yeah.
Kevin Eastman does live feeds on Facebook. I was like, I didn't know Kevin Eastman did live feeds on Facebook. I jumped on there literally when I was on a 15-minute break from work. As I come into the live stream, he reveals who the Last Ronin is. And I'm like, you know what? I can't be mad at him. I came in on the live stream. I didn't know this is what they were talking about. So I got it spoiled to me by the man himself.
I think I know who it is because honestly, if it was me, don't tell me.
I'm not going to. Yeah. I don't spoil stuff for people.
I do think of the four, Michelangelo would be the most interesting of the four because here's the thing, Donatello's smart. But again, if you look at the main comic they currently have going on, I read it. I read that one too. Sophie Campbell's awesome, by the way. I really loved what she's done with it. Donatello's already kind of faced being the bitter old man. So they kind of done that with Don. So Donatello's out. Raphael and Leonardo are predictable. Leonardo, you could see being the last Ronin, the last ride, the last honorable ride for a warrior. Wrath is just too obvious. The revenge thing, that's very Raphael anyway. So there wouldn't be any. Michelangelo, however, here's the thing. He's the gentlest of the four turtles. But because he's gentle people, generally speaking, are very strong people. They're just generally very, very strong individuals. If they get pushed to the point where they have to leave that gentleness behind, they're terrifying. Right. So if I'm doing that story, Michelangelo is the most interesting of the four turtles. I'm not saying you couldn't do it with the other ones. I just think he's the most like that's the one. He's the one that's interesting because he's the kindest of the four of them when you break them down. And it's like, why would he go down this road? What drove him to get to this place? That's a really good story.
Yeah, I appreciate your breakdown. That's really an awesome way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
I had different opinions on it.
No spoilers.
No spoilers. I'm not.
No. I'm not saying that. But who like what would have been your take? Honestly, I'm curious.
Honestly, I would have gone. I was thinking for the longest time Donatello. The reason why I felt Donatello was because Donatello, while he is the smartest, He's also the one that's not looked at as the best fighter.
Okay.
There's a lot of things about him that you look at him as a little bit less than when you compare him to Raph, who's the super strong personality. You've got Mikey, who's the most popular probably as far as the humor. Then you got Leo, who's just the dominating master of almost everything. And so then there's Donatello, who's the guy who's like, I'm the brain. Mm-hmm. Nobody would expect me to survive in a situation like this. I mean, yeah, I can outtake people, but I'm sorry, if I'm in the middle of a fight against a bunch of ninjas, is my brain really gonna be the thing that's gonna help me?
Yeah, I just look at them like like Donatello would be my second choice, by the way, right? He'd be my second choice because not just the brain thing. He's the most cynical of the four of them.
Yeah,
right. He's the most cynical of the four of them. So he again in that environment. So if you look at it from that perspective, he's also oddly the most romantic. He cares a lot more than the other turtles. Like they all care, but they all express it, and they all like him and Raph. This is what they have in common: they protect themselves, because they care so much.
Yeah,
Raph, that's his anger. His anger.
And I think with Donnie too, he's the one that embraced this humanity of being what he is more than anybody else, because he's embraced the tech. He's the one that built the turtle van, and he's the one that uses the tech to keep his eyes on the world and all this other stuff. So he's embraced
the most adaptable of the four of them. He's the most adaptable of the four of them, easily. Yeah, I love this. We talk turtles and all that stuff. It's like, this is cool. I like that. But again, for me, like if I'm looking at it strictly from a personality point of view, right? Leo and Raph are the least too interesting to tell that story with, just because Raph, you'd expect that it's too much of an expectation, and Leo, it's like you're a badass, like it's like the last samurai, like any last of. Yeah, you're kind of expected to be the last one standing. You're probably the Raph might be as good as you, maybe, but he doesn't have your heart when it comes to the fight itself. So I looked at it like that. It's like, okay, so you two aren't that interesting. Don, I know it's got to be either Don or Mike, right? But I'm like, if it were up to me, it would be Michelangelo, and it's just the kind of yeah. Is that a fair? Like, you like how I broke that down?
I like how you broke that down, and I hope you are happy with the decision that they make.
Yeah.
I'm more interested in how things got to that point.
Yeah, no,
we haven't quite got that story yet, because of course that's issue 2, and they actually backed up. It was supposed to drop next month. It was supposed to drop in December, but because of some issues, it got pushed back to January. So there'll be second print runs of volume 1, because as you probably know, they didn't print a whole lot of them.
My comic shop's in Calgary. I'm in Windsor, Ontario right now. So the week it dropped, and like I called my con, you got one, right? It's like, yeah, mine.
I got one.
I'm not. No, it's mine. So the only thing that's going to make me sad is if it So I get do my second shipment of comics in December. So I'm kind of happy that the number 2 isn't coming out, because I was going to read it in January anyway. You know what shipping's like during Christmas.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know what? I'm fine with it. Waiting until January for it, because it's the So we're both Turtles fans, huh? So Ninja Turtles is like my favorite superhero comic. I think it's the best comic month in and month out, every month.
Yeah.
Because
my dad and them unfortunately didn't have any Ninja Turtles comics, so it wasn't until the animated series came out, and then I started going back and looking for stuff, and all they had was like the Archie comics coming out. I really didn't see a whole lot of the Eastman and Laird stuff in where I lived.
Oh, it wasn't until so hard to find.
Yeah, well, IDW has re-released the stuff. And so I plan on getting those trades at some point. That way I can have the original stories. Like, I'm more practical than I am like, oh, let me get this because it's going to be valuable someday. It's more like, I just want it in my collection.
Because it's a damn cool story. It's a damn cool story. Yeah, no, when this series, the current series launched, I looked at when issue 1 was there, saw Kevin Eastman's name on it. It's like, I'm in. I didn't even look at it. It's like, I'm in. I don't care. and I have been reading it.
Yeah. I got the 2 trades for City at War. That was the last one I've been able to pick up. I try to pick the trades up that way I can just read the story block.
City at War. Okay, guys, we are spoiling issue 100. So I'm just gonna warn you guys right now. So if you want to skip the next probably 5 minutes or so, fair warning. But I loved Splinter's death. That was so well done. That was so well done.
Well, and even the Jenica stuff. What? The way they did the Jenica stuff, where
that stuff was cool. I
think it was Leo, right? Leo did the blood transfusion.
Yeah. No, it was an interesting. It's interesting. I'm curious if they let her down. Like, I'm reading Sophie Campbell's current run with her, and I'm curious if they're going to have, like, there's this one cartoon where Michelangelo ate a cookie and he would shift back and forth between human and turtle. That would be interesting if she, I think of all of them, that she did that, because I think there is, of all of them, that would also, like, besides the fact that she's the woman turtle, it would set her apart. That would be a neat way to set her apart as well, because the mutagen is, but no, I've actually enjoyed the addition of her in the thing. I love what Sophie Campbell's done with the turtles since. So Tom Waltz did a fantastic job. 100-issue run, and you can't knock that at all. Yeah. My favorite 2 issues were issue 50. I loved Shredder's death. That was, and his resurrection. The mirror of that in 100 was just like, I teared up a little bit when I finished reading.
Yeah, I mean, it was beautifully done. The artwork is great.
Yeah.
And everything, and I just, man, yeah, this turtle stuff is gone. And that's the thing about it. I think I was talking to a buddy of mine. I was just saying, what's enduring about the turtles to me is the fact that you've got these characters, and this, you mentioned it best, the brotherhood.
Yeah,
that's what makes it work. And it's the fact that it is endeared for so long with us, primarily because of the brotherhood. I mean, even you've got people outside, of course. You've got, April O'Neil, you've got Casey Jones, you've got the other mutants that are out there around, but it's all about the brotherhood.
No, ultimately it's about those 4 characters. Like, everybody else can come and go as needed. Although, on a personal note, I love this version of April O'Neil. What they have in the comic is, she is an amazing character all the way through. She's actually probably the quiet back. She's not Penny, like Inspector Gadget, but she's that quiet little piece. She's like that little piece, you would notice it was gone if it wasn't there.
Right.
She adds something to that story big time. I love old Hob. Hob's my favorite villain in the entire series. I love how he's developed the whole way through. I think
it's a beautiful series. I'm gonna eventually get the Jenica trade too, because I want to see kind of how they take care of her story. I know that trade just dropped.
I'm gonna say this. The first mini is not. I'm getting Jenica the second book, number 1. I'll let you know that I wasn't as crazy about the first stuff. I love what Sophie did with her. Like again, the 101, 102, 103, 104. That whole run features Jenica, and Jenica is the main character in that arc. Right, for the first 6 issues. I love what she did with her. Like, Sophie Campbell did. Waltz did a phenomenal job. 100 issues. I like that they actually, Sophie adds, her voice is quieter but very strong. She does little intimate moments better than Waltz did. So, and honestly, considering what just happened, simplifying the series after doing that run actually has been I think a godsend to it. I love that it's a different voice. I love that it's the only, during the pandemic, it is the only regular, I read that. I read Forest Sector. I read Green Lantern because I'm a huge Green Lantern fan, right? Those are my only regular books I'm reading right now because I love, Well, I think the Turtle stuff's amazing, and I've been a Green Lantern fan since I was 8. So I'm not saying I haven't read other stuff.
Right.
But if you're going to talk about regular stuff, in times like these, it's like, what's the important stories to you? Overcoming fear and a brotherhood of turtles fighting baddies from super ninjas and things from Dimension X. That's my jam.
Yeah, and the Forest Sector stuff's really interesting too because what is the name of the lantern? I can't remember her name yet. I haven't.
Who?
The Lantern's in Far Sector.
Oh,
She's a new
Joe.
one.
Joe.
Okay, so the thing about her that's interesting to me, just from not only the look, but her design is really cool. And I know she's going to be in the future state stuff as well. So she will be the lantern that they're going to have during the future state stuff for their actual Justice League.
So, my opinion, I had this conversation with Elsa. John Stewart is the money in Green Lantern that's never been tapped.
Yes.
That's my opinion.
Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, the cartoon, and showing us the potential, and it's still not even fully tapped.
No. So Far Sector to me, I don't know if you read this way back in the day. It's called Green Lantern Mosaic.
Yes.
Far Sector reminds me, it's a better version of that. That's what it reminds me of. It has a lot of similar beats, except and this is credit to N.K. Jemisin. She's done a fantastic job with it, and Jamal. She did that team is amazing. Please keep if they're gonna keep doing adventures with Joe, please be this team. Just keep. I don't care if it's once a year. Keep it this team.
Yeah.
But what they do very well is they took the Mosaic alien world sci-fi, and they made it an old school science fiction story that's very character driven. This is about Joe being a complete fish out of water and seeing how she reacts to this completely alien world, right? And again, when I first read it, it's like, this is familiar. Then I remember John Stewart's Mosaic run, and I'm like, oh my God, some of the same ideas are literally right here. Is that am I on drugs here, or am I?
No, not at all. That's actually a pretty good assessment there. Like I hadn't thought about Mosaic in forever. My gosh, yeah, my dad and my uncle they would get new issues, so they would switch out stuff, and I get to read that as it went. And I was just like, dude, this is mind blowing. I know I just got my hands on the other history of the DC universe. Okay. And so Black Lightning is the main character in that first book, Black Label book. See, and so he has an interesting commentary on John Stewart. And it's funny because a lot of people are complaining about it. They're like, oh, so they're basically writing that John Stewart was the sidekick. This is racist. I'm like, did you read John Stewart when they first created him? He pretty much was the sidekick.
But I still, okay, so me, if it were up to me, see, if I were to revamp Green Lantern all the way through, right, I would have each particular lantern for like one season. And of all of them, so John and Guy are so interesting. John, because of what he's overcome, he is such, like, in my opinion, he's the biggest badass of all of them. Just everything he's done, everything he's had to endure and overcome. Guy's a close second. I think the interesting thing is that where they're both different is John doesn't have to prove anything to anybody. It's about the fact that he's got these giant obstacles that would crush most people, and he keeps going. I mean, he's just a natural fighter, and it's like he's awesome. Guy has something to prove. He wants to prove that he is as good as anybody else that's held this ring, which makes him pettier in some ways. But in others, it's like that drive to be better is something I think we can all relate to.
Yeah, and I think with Guy, it's weird because with Guy, it sometimes feels like it's not that he wants to be just as good as. Yeah. Guy wants to be the best.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Not all of them. Like, he wants to be the one that's the most recognized.
No, but that's when he gets his ass in trouble. See, that's when he gets his ass in trouble. It's when he forgets about that, he is probably the best. That's the best thing about him. But because he never forgets that for himself, it gets him in all kinds of trouble. Like, I'm a big Green Lantern fan, and I personally, Joe, will see what they do with her. I think there's a lot of potential there. But for my money, if they were to revamp the Green Lantern as a movie franchise, it would be John. It wouldn't be anybody else. It would be John.
Well, yeah, because they're saying that's what they want to do. They want to go off the backs of Hal and John, whereas HBO Max, I believe they're doing a series where they're going to be doing primarily dealing with like Alan Scott and Sinestro and Guy. And
they don't need to do that. Like, honestly, I think what they should do is, okay, So what kind of Green Lantern show do you want? If we do a buddy cop show, it actually should be Simon Baz and Jessica Cruz. That's what it should be.
Oh, and they're in the show, but they're doing different episodes. I think it's like an 8 or 12 episode show where they're doing basically each show will focus on a different Green Lantern. But I'm like, I don't know that you can focus on these Green Lanterns for just one episode of a show and really do it justice.
No, not one. You can tell an interesting story with all of them, one, but not a cohesive one would be difficult. But anyways, I have my own ideas, and where they go with that. But like going back to story, we should probably, dude. I seriously hope we do get the chance to meet in person someday. I think I'd love to have a drink with you, or I'd love to shoot the breeze like this in real life.
Definitely would love to sit down and hang out. Yeah.
Yeah, no, because you're a cool dude. You've done 3 books. Are those the only 3 you've done, or have you done more?
No, I've done at least 10. So
what's more talented than me? I'm the pretty one. I'm the pretty
one. One of the other books I did was Pencil Ninja's Creepy Tales, book 1. Fairy tales that you've never heard of before. Basically, I kind of imagine what it'd be like if an 8-year-old sugar powered robot boy decided to tell his version of fairy tales.
Oh, dude, good Lord. You shouldn't be. You realize what's going to happen, right? I'm going to eventually call you. I'm going to contact you in a couple of weeks and be like, so listen, man, what book should I start with you? And just shut up and take my money. Is that your plan here?
Well, now I don't mind selling stuff to people, but the thing about it is, I just want to put my stuff in hands of people that'll inspire and encourage. Okay. That's the bottom line.
Okay, so can I make this as just I'm just being just. I respect the work you've put into it, right? I think you should be paid for it. That's just me, right? So
yeah, definitely.
So we'll say in a couple of weeks, because we have each other's contact information, right? This is what I'm gonna do. I want you to pick one of your books. We'll do this throughout. We'll make this quote unquote the last question, quote unquote.
Okay.
For anyone wanting to get into Will Holland, however they want, like if this is their first time meeting you, what's the book you want people to remember you with of the ones you've done?
Hard choice, but I'm gonna make it right now.
Yeah, okay.
This one.
All right. Why?
Because I don't care who you are. I don't care what you've heard about yourself, your situation, your circumstances. Your life matters. You matter. In a world where, especially this year, where there's been a lot of stuff thrown at all of us, sometimes we forget that we have a purpose. Sometimes we forget that we have dreams. Sometimes we forget that we have goals. Sometimes we forget how vital it is when we wake up in the morning and we can breathe in that breath. That means there's a reason we're here. Okay? Nobody is a waste of space. Nobody is an accident. You matter. Your life matters. So I just want people to know that, because they need to know that. They need to be reminded. We all need to be reminded. There are times where, we forget. And so we feel like sometimes it's just like, oh, nobody's listening, nobody cares. And I'm like, I care. And when I say I care, I'm understanding. I'm pointing at myself. I'm looking at myself in the mirror. Because the mind's a powerful thing. It really is. Mm-hmm. If you wake up every morning, you tell yourself, there's a song by NF called The Search. And there's a thing in there, there's a line in there where he says, if you wake up every morning, you look in the mirror and you say, you're never gonna be great, then you'll never be great. Because you've convinced yourself you're not great. Because you continue to tell yourself you're not great. But if I can look you dead in your eye right now and I tell you your life matters, I don't care what you've heard about. Your parents could have gotten in a fight when you were 12 and said some ugly stuff about you, and then fight with each other to hurt the other. And you took that and internalized it. And you carry that weight with you. Your life matters still. You still have a purpose. You still have a goal. And don't let anybody tell you different. So that's the message that right here from my heart to yours.
Damn.
That's why this book is the most impassioned I've ever done. So
it's a good book. Sounds really good. I think I'm going to want to pick it up. Dude, I think we could talk for a lot longer. So I'm going to can I give you an invitation right now?
Okay.
Here's my invitation. So every Friday, and starting literally tomorrow, I'm doing what I call drinking draws. So basically, I believe that because this is a visual podcast now as well, that maybe what we should be doing is showing more visual stuff. And you are a talented illustrator. Now, my show got very popular in terms of guests. My guest list has gotten quite big fast. But I would love to have you come back for a drink and draw, say in February. Would you like to do that?
Well, definitely.
Definitely, because honestly, man, I feel like I just scratched the surface with you, and I really enjoyed this. I hope you did too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Question.
So real quick before we wrap up, is that your most recent book? Is the one you did there?
No, that one was done. I did about a year or so ago. My most recent book is The Invisible Kid and the Monster Squad.
Okay, so why don't we do this then? Since we are at the end of the show, right, why don't you promote? Because we promoted Your Life Matters, and I think honestly, if that doesn't sell you, I don't know what will. But why don't you do your most recent book? How people can find you? Hell, we didn't even mention your podcast. You should mention your podcast here too. And just plug away for a bit, and then when we're done, we'll wrap up.
Okay, sounds good. So first of all, this is my most recent book. This is Invisible Kid and the Monster Squad source book. It gives you a little bit of heads up on the characters I'll be writing about. Hopefully, early to mid 2021, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. I will be releasing that comic as a comic where you're going to see the adventures of Invisible Kid and the Monster Squad versus the Zombie King. This book gets you a little bit into some of the stuff behind the scenes before that book comes out. So www.amazon.com/author/William Holland is the author page for my Amazon for these books. They're available there. I have a bundle right now where I have not one, not two, not three, but four of my books. All four of these right now with a metal trading card for $55. So
quiet.
Well, there you go. So that's that bundle. That's available to you. There's also a random metal trading card of one of the characters from Invisible Kid and Monster Squad that you'll get with that bundle as well. So that's the whole. I call it the whole plate. If you remember the first Transformers movie, there's a scene where Anthony Anderson says, "I ate the whole plate." That's what that is. That's the whole plate. So check me out on Amazon. Also, I'm on Facebook, William K. Holland. I have a group called Conversations About ... fan page. That's where you'll find the fans of my podcast, Conversations About ... We get geeky, we get pop culture-y. Sometimes we get a little philosophical. Sometimes we get into some hard topics about things. But for the most part, we try to keep it geeky. We try to keep it light because we understand in the world we live in, there's a lot of darkness around. We just want to be some light in the midst of it. Okay. And then you can find the podcast on anchor.com, anchor.fm. You can find it on Google Play, Spotify. That's where most people listen to it. Type in a search for Conversations About ... Put it in quotes. You should have it right there. It'll look like a little space background with this Conversation on white. We're about to hit episode 100. So you're going to get, I'm telling you, it's about to go down. I'm getting hyped. I'm telling you have no idea how hype I am about this. But
hold on. Am I cool enough to come on your show sometime?
You know what? I was going to ask you anyway. So yeah, you're definitely cool enough to get on. Yeah, we'll definitely do an interview with you.
Okay, cool.
Indeed. Okay, let's make that happen.
I'll still be the pretty one, right?
Yep. You sure will. And I don't mind. It's okay.
I'm sorry, I can't help it.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
So those are the basic places to find me. I'm on Instagram and Twitter. I don't do Twitter as much because Twitter can get really crazy. But Will Holland 9973. Follow me on Instagram. Follow me on Twitter, and that's about it.
All right. Well, before I wrap up, I want to first off thank Will for coming on my show. I had a blast with him, and I think he did too.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, I was honestly thank you for coming. Second off, anyone that listened, thank you for listening to the show or watching the show, however you did chosen to do this. If you want to support the podcast, the easiest way to do it is hit the subscribe button on my Twitch channel or on my YouTube, or subscribe to my podcast, which is available on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, Audible, everywhere. You can find me. Just look up Just Joshing. Stay inspired. Keep doing your thing. Keep surfing the chaos in this time. And I'll see you guys tomorrow night for my first drinking draw.
Woo!
Woo!